Welcome to Tales Lab, where lying wives and sneaky girlfriends finally get exposed. From girls' trips that never happened to coworkers who were a little too friendly, we break down every red flag, messy receipt, and suspicious text with humor, shock, and just a little bit of petty. Expect wild stories, dramatic reactions, and satisfying karma as the truth comes crashing through the door. If you love relationship tea, plot twists, and seeing players get played, this channel is your new home. Every single chaotic, jaw-dropping, binge-worthy episode. Hit subscribe and never miss a fresh dose of exposed cheating. Don't forget to check our previous stories. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing my wife, Saad Windeloch, ever did wasn't just emptying our accounts or lying about another man. It was the way she watched my car decline in a Towson pharmacy, then leaned close and whispered, "Figure it out. You're my husband," like my struggle was entertainment. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked satisfied. She walked out ahead of me, pregnant belly leading the way, leaving me to swallow the shame under bright lights and curious eyes. Here's how it happened, and how I learned that the truth doesn't need shouting when paperwork can speak louder than betrayal. I'm Kyron Deloach, born and raised in Prince George's County, Maryland. I'm not the kind of man who needs to be the loudest in a room. I learned early that stability is a form of love. Pay the bills. Fix what's broken. Show up when it matters. I built my life on routines and responsibility, and I believe marriage was a partnership built on the same. When Saad and I got married, I thought we shared that value. I didn't realize she saw my steadiness as something to exploit. I work in compliance for a shipping company in Baltimore, which means my job is to notice patterns other people miss. I review records, confirm numbers, and make sure policies match reality. That mindset followed me home in small ways, keeping a budget, setting aside savings, tracking due dates. I never considered that I'd need those skills to protect myself from the woman I loved. Back then, I thought love meant trust without suspicion. I thought checking behind your spouse was what damaged marriages, not what saved a person from being destroyed. Saad was magnetic when I met her. We crossed paths at a fundraiser in Washington, D.C., and she made everyone feel like the room was brighter because she'd entered it. She was warm in public, affectionate in ways that made me feel chosen. She said she loved how reliable I was. She told me she was tired of men who only talked about plans and never built anything real. I believed her. I took her words as proof that she valued character. I didn't notice how quickly her admiration turned into expectation. At first, we felt balanced. She worked in marketing, I worked in compliance, and we shared a small place in Baltimore County while we saved for a home. I covered most of the bills, not because she couldn't contribute, but because I earned more and I wanted us to build fast. Saad liked nice things, but I told myself that wasn't a flaw. Everyone has preferences. I thought we were simply different, me focused on the foundation, her focused on the finish. I didn't understand she was spending beyond finish. She was spending beyond us. The shift started quietly. Little jokes that weren't really jokes. If I hesitated before buying something unnecessary, she'd roll her eyes and say, "You act like we're broke." If I asked where she'd been, she'd sigh like my questions were exhausting. She began describing other men as ambitious and confident, words she used less and less for me. I tried to adjust. I planned dates. I booked weekends in Annapolis. I bought her the things she pointed at. The more I did, the more she treated it like I was paying rent for her presence. When Saad told me she was pregnant, my first reaction was joy so intense it scared me. I pictured a little person with her smile and my stubbornness. I wanted to do everything right. I took on more responsibility at home. I stocked the kitchen with the foods her doctor recommended. I went to appointments even when my work calendar was tight. I assumed pregnancy stress was why her mood changed so sharply. But the truth was simpler and harsher. Pregnancy didn't change her character. It just removed her patience for pretending. Her phone became a wall between us. She'd laugh at messages she wouldn't explain. She'd turn the screen away when I walked close. Late at night, she'd step onto the balcony to take calls with her voice low and sweet, the kind of sweet she stopped using with me. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say, "My cousin," then look at me like I was childish for asking. If I pushed, she'd call me controlling. I started doubting my instincts, because the last thing I wanted to be was the kind of husband who made a pregnant wife feel trapped. Then the money began to move. At first, it was small amounts I could rationalize. A couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, labeled as ordinary things, utilities, rent, appointment. I saw it while paying bills one night and assumed Saad had handled something I hadn't noticed. I asked her about it casually, and she didn't even glance up. "Stop stressing me out," she said. "You act like I'm stealing." The way she said stealing made me feel guilty for even wondering. So I apologized. That's the part that embarrasses me now. I apologized. Over the next month, the transfers increased. The timing was deliberate, always after I got paid, always in amounts that wouldn't trigger my bank's fraud alerts. Some were Zelle payments. Some were cash withdrawals. Some were direct transfers to an account I didn't recognize. I told myself it had to be for a baby preparation. I bought furniture. I paid the deposit for a larger place. I covered everything because I wanted my child to arrive into stability. Meanwhile, Sada's online shopping increased, and packages came so often the delivery driver started greeting her by name. When I finally checked the savings account, my stomach sank. The number that had taken years of discipline to build was shrinking like a tire with a slow leak. I confronted Saad in our kitchen on a Sunday morning while sunlight hit the counter, bright enough to make everything feel painfully real. I showed her the statements. She stared at them, then stared at me, and her face didn't change. No shock, no concern. She simply said, "It's my money too." Then she walked past me, grabbed her keys, and left like I'd asked her something boring. That was the first time I felt fear in my own marriage. Not fear of conflict, but fear of being used. I sat at our table and tried to replay the last few months like security footage. Every expensive brunch, every late errand, every networking event. It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. I still didn't know the reason, but I knew my wife was living a story I wasn't part of. The worst part was how calm she'd been while I panicked. It was as if my anxiety fed her sense of power. The public humiliation came a week later. Saad insisted we attend a birthday dinner in Arlington, Virginia. She told me it would be good for us to get out. I wore a clean suit, trying to look like the man she used to respect. Saad wore a dress that turned heads, and she seemed to love how other people looked at her. The restaurant was bright, crowded, and loud enough that private pain could become public entertainment. I didn't know I was walking into a setup designed to shrink me in front of strangers. That's where I met Damon Red. Saad greeted him with warmth she hadn't shown me in months. Damon stood when we arrived, shook my hand too firmly, and called me Big Bro, like we shared anything. He wore a watch that looked expensive, and he carried himself like he wanted to be seen. Saad introduced him as someone from her professional circle, but her eyes lingered on him in a way that made my stomach tighten. He sat too close to her. Their laughter came too easily. I told myself I was overthinking. I wasn't. During dinner, Saad kept making jokes at my expense. She commented on how quiet I was, how serious I always looked, how I needed to loosen up. Damon laughed hard, like the jokes were for him. When the waiter brought the check, Saad didn't reach for her purse. She leaned back, glanced at Damon, then turned to the waiter with a smile and said loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "He's just the bill payer." The words hit me like a slap. People laughed. Damon smirked. My face stayed still, but something inside me went cold. On the drive home, Saad acted like nothing happened. She hummed to herself, scrolling through her phone. I kept my eyes on the road because I didn't trust my voice. When we got home, she didn't apologize. She didn't ask if I was okay. She went to the mirror, started wiping off her makeup, and said, "If you can't handle a joke, that's on you." Then she turned off the light and went to sleep. I lay awake in the dark, realizing humiliation was not an accident in our marriage. It was a tool. After that dinner, Saad stopped pretending. She began coming home later, speaking to me with open contempt. If I asked where she'd been, she'd say out, like that was all I deserved. If I mentioned our savings, she'd say, "Don't start." She called my boundaries insecurity. She called my questions control. She called my pain drama. I started feeling like I was living with someone who wanted me to feel small because it made her feel bigger. The more silent I became, The more she pushed, like she wanted proof she could break me. The bank confirmed what my heart already knew. I went to a branch in Catonsville during my lunch break because I needed to hear it from someone official. The teller looked at the screen, then looked at me with a careful expression. "Sir," she said softly, "your joint savings was emptied last week." I felt heat rush up my neck. I asked for details. She printed the transaction history. The transfers were authorized through Sada's login, routed to a new account. One memo line said "Start over." I walked out holding those papers like they were evidence of a crime scene. When I confronted Sad with the printout, I did it calmly because I needed to know who I was dealing with. She glanced at the paper, then at me, and her mouth curved into a smug smile that made my blood run cold. "Don't embarrass yourself," she said. "You're not built for the kind of woman I am." Then she added the line she wanted to crush me with. "If you're smart, you'll beg me to stay." She said it like she practiced it, like she wanted to watch me plead. I didn't beg. I didn't yell. I went quiet in a way even I didn't recognize. It wasn't weakness. It was survival. I slept in the guest room. I stopped trying to earn kindness from someone who enjoyed withholding it. At work, I functioned on autopilot. At home, I started documenting everything: statements, timestamps, screenshots, login records. I requested full transfer histories from a bank. I made a list of missing items and noted when they disappeared. I treated my marriage like a case file because my emotions were too bruised to lead me safely. The question of the baby started haunting me. It wasn't because I wanted to punish Saad. It was because her behavior had crossed into a territory where truth was no longer guaranteed. She spoke in half smiles and vague answers. She treated loyalty like something foolish. I tried to ignore the doubt because it felt cruel. But doubt doesn't disappear when you tell it to. It grows quietly. Finally, one night, after Saad came home late and tossed her purse on the couch like I didn't exist, I looked at her and said, "We need a paternity test." Sada's reaction wasn't heartbreak. It was insult, like I'd questioned her status. "So you think I'm that kind of woman?" she snapped. Her eyes were sharp, not watery. She wanted me to apologize, to back down. I didn't. I calmly scheduled it at a lab in Towson and told her the time. She agreed with a smug confidence that made me uneasy. It was as if she believed the test would humiliate me, not reveal her. She wanted me to feel small again. She didn't understand that I wasn't trying to win an argument. I was trying to find reality. The day of the lab, Saad dressed like she was going to brunch. She wore a warm-toned coat, flawless makeup, and a slight smile that never reached her eyes. In the waiting room, she leaned back, arms folded, scrolling her phone. I sat stiff in a clean suit holding the paperwork envelope, my palms sweating. The room was bright, almost too bright, with quiet strangers and the soft buzz of a TV playing something cheerful. Saad glanced at me and whispered, "After this, you're going to feel so small." That's how she spoke to her husband. Then the receptionist called. Ms. Saad Windeloch called first. It wasn't the words themselves. It was the shift in Sada's posture. Her smugness flickered, then she forced it back. She stood up fast and walked to the desk like she owned the place. I watched her go, heart pounding, because I understood the symbolic cruelty of it. She wanted to be first. She wanted control. She wanted me waiting. When my name was called later, I stood up on legs that felt borrowed, and I followed the nurse down the hall like I was walking to a verdict. The result came in clean language, no emotion. The baby wasn't mine. I stared at the paper until the letters blurred. I expected anger, but what I felt first was grief. A deep, hollow grief for the future I'd been building with devotion and discipline. Outside, the morning sun was bright enough to make the world look normal. Cars moved. People walked. Life kept going, indifferent to my collapse. Saad didn't cry. She didn't even pretend. She looked at me and said, "Don't act like you're the only one who's hurt." Then she turned away. At home, Saad started packing before I even spoke. Not because she felt guilty, but because she knew the leverage had shifted. She tried to soften her voice, but it sounded fake, like a customer service representative reading from script. "We can work this out," she said. It was the first time she used "we" in months, and it wasn't love. It was management. She wanted access to the stability she'd been draining. She wanted a controlled outcome. I didn't argue. I walked into my office, opened my laptop, and emailed an attorney in Baltimore County. When Saad realized I'd lawyered up, she got meaner, not remorseful. She told my sister I was spiraling. She told mutual friends I was controlling. She implied I was unstable, like she was laying groundwork to protect herself. She tried to bait me into arguments in front of witnesses. If I stayed calm, she'd call me cold. If I avoided her, she'd call me coward. The goal wasn't truth. It was image. She wanted to be the victim in every version of the story. I didn't correct her publicly. I collected proof privately. Damon resurfaced like a shadow, suddenly more visible now that the baby truth was out. I saw a message notification on Sada's phone once when she left it on the counter. Damon calling her my love. My stomach flipped, but I took a photo of it and saved it. I didn't confront her with it, because confrontation was what she wanted. She wanted emotional chaos. Instead, I focused on records, bank transfers with Damon's name, Zelle receipts, and dates matching her appointments. Every new piece didn't make me feel better. It made me feel clearer. Clarity is painful when you've been loyal. My attorney didn't promise revenge. He promised structure. He explained how courts respond to documentation more than feelings. He told me to keep communication limited and written. He told me to stop sharing my plans with Saad. He told me to brace myself for how shameless people can become when consequences approach. He was right. Saad moved like someone who thought the world was a stage and she could talk her way out of anything. She thought I'd crumble in court because I'm quiet. She didn't understand quiet men can be dangerous when they're organized. The first hearing at Baltimore County Circuit Court felt unreal. Cold hallways, polished floors, people sitting with folders like their whole lives had been turned into paperwork. Saad arrived dressed like she was attending an event. Her hair was laid, her face calm, her posture confident. Damon sat behind her, chin lifted like he belonged there. Saad glanced at me with a slight smirk, like she expected a breakdown. She expected begging. She expected me to ask for mercy. She still believed my love made me weak. I sat still, hands folded, letting my attorney do the speaking. Sada's lawyer tried to frame everything as stress and misunderstanding. He used careful words like mistakes and miscommunication. Saad nodded at the right moments, expression neutral. She didn't apologize. She didn't look ashamed. She watched the judge like she was evaluating whether she could charm him. Then my attorney stood and said, calmly, "We'd like to present the financial record." The air shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It was surgical. Paper doesn't care about your smile. Numbers don't soften because you're pregnant. Records stay records. My attorney walked the court through the account history step by step. He showed how the withdrawals aligned with my paydays. He showed the new account created in Sada's name. He showed transfers labeled as household expenses that routed to Damon. He presented bank login logs confirming authorization from her device. He didn't insult her. He didn't speculate. He simply connected the dots until the pattern became impossible to deny. Sada's smirk faded into irritation, then into something sharper. Not guilt, fear. The judge asked direct questions. Sada's answers began to contradict each other. When the judge ordered a forensic accounting review and froze certain assets, Sada's confidence wavered. Damon shifted in his seat like the room suddenly got smaller. The court granted me temporary exclusive use of the home and limited Sada's access to joint funds pending review. It wasn't revenge. It was consequence. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not happiness. Relief. Because for once, someone in authority was looking at facts, not at Sada's performance. For once, my calm wasn't dismissed as weakness. It was recognized as restraint. Outside the courtroom, Saad hissed at me, "You ruined everything." Her eyes were dry. Her voice was sharp with rage, not grief. Damon stood a few feet behind her, suddenly quiet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just looked at her and said, "You did. I just stopped protecting you from the truth." It was the only sentence I gave her that day, and it felt like closing a door. Saad didn't respond with remorse because she didn't have any. She responded with hatred, because hatred is what's left when control disappears. The months that followed were heavy but steady. I complied with every request from my attorney. I forwarded documents. I kept my communication written. I stopped answering phone calls from Sada's family. Her aunt tried to shame me, saying I was abandoning a pregnant woman. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I let my attorney handle what needed handling. Privately, I processed grief in quiet pieces, some nights staring at walls, other nights taking long drives through Colombia just to breathe. I didn't seek public sympathy. I didn't need an audience. I needed my mind back. Damon disappeared the moment legal pressure became real. That part wasn't announced to me. I simply noticed Sada's tone change when she spoke about him. Less proud, more bitter. I saw fewer notifications. I heard fewer late-night calls on the balcony. The man she drained our savings for wasn't built for courtrooms and consequences. He was built for attention and easy money. And Saad, who had treated me like a tool, was now learning what it feels like to be used. She still didn't show remorse. She just redirected her anger toward everyone but herself. The final resolution didn't come with shouting. It came with signatures and orders. The forensic review confirmed the pattern. The court recognized my documentation and limited the damage Saad could continue causing. Certain recoveries were arranged, and boundaries were put in place that she couldn't charm her way around. She didn't get to rewrite the story. She didn't get to paint me as unstable without challenge. The truth became part of the official record. That was karma, not a viral moment, not a dramatic confrontation, but a legal reality she couldn't escape. Saad walked away furious, not sorry. I moved quietly after everything settled enough for me to breathe. I found a smaller place in Columbia, Maryland, clean, calm mine. I didn't announce it. I didn't post about fresh starts. I just packed my things, kept what mattered, and left the rest behind. I started waking up early, going to the gym when it was empty, letting routine rebuild me. I ate real meals again. I listened to silence without feeling hunted by it. My success wasn't flashy. It was peace. It was sleeping through the night. It was not being afraid to check my own bank account. I took a better job offer with steadier hours and stronger pay, and I kept it private. I told my sister. I told my mother. I didn't tell people who treated my pain like gossip. I returned to the parts of myself I'd abandoned while trying to keep Saad happy. My discipline, my pride in doing things right, my belief that quiet strength still counts. Some days the grief hit unexpectedly, especially when I saw a father with a stroller or heard a baby laugh in a store aisle. But even then, I reminded myself, my life was saved by truth, not destroyed by it. Saad never apologized. She never expressed regret. Even at the end, she acted like the consequences were something happening to her, not something caused by her. That's who she was. And that acceptance, seeing her clearly, was my final freedom. She thought I'd beg after she betrayed me. She thought my love would keep me paying, keep me silent, keep me available. Instead, I let the paper trail speak in court, and I took my life back in private. No speeches, no revenge tour, just a man who stopped funding his own disrespect and rebuilt quietly, one honest day at a time. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on a notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop. I took a better job offer with steadier hours and stronger pay, and I kept it private. I told my sister. I told my mother. I didn't tell people who treated my pain like gossip. I returned to the parts of myself I'd abandoned while trying to keep Saad happy. My discipline, my pride in doing things right, my belief that quiet strength still counts. Some days the grief hit unexpectedly, especially when I saw a father with a stroller or heard a baby laugh in a store aisle. But even then, I reminded myself, my life was saved by truth, not destroyed by it. Saad never apologized. She never expressed regret. Even at the end, she acted like the consequences were something happening to her, not something caused by her. That's who she was. And that acceptance, seeing her clearly, was my final freedom. She thought I'd beg after she betrayed me. She thought my love would keep me paying, keep me silent, keep me available. Instead, I let the paper trail speak in court, and I took my life back in private. No speeches, no revenge tour, just a man who stopped funding his own disrespect and rebuilt quietly, one honest day at a time. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.